Thursday, October 16th, 2016. It's a spectacular sunny fall morning in southwestern British Columbia. Thousands are on the roadways, commuting, running errands, and traveling to and from within the region. Even more are busy at work or school, managing their daily routines. It's 11 a.m. when the ground starts shaking. The largest earthquake to hit British Columbia in modern times has just begun. Many people recognize the shaking and immediately take action to protect themselves by dropping to the ground, covering, and holding on. The earthquake is intense, lasting 3+ minutes. During the intense shaking, infrastructure is compromised, and many buildings are suffering damage. Vehicle traffic has come to a gridlock. Many people across southwestern British Columbia have likely been injured from falling debris and structure failures. Some have perished. As fast as the earthquake began, the shaking stops. People are gathering themselves, coming to the reality of what has just happened. Some are crying for help or totally bewildered. Others have started to assist those in need. People are using their phones, attempting to make contact with loved ones.
Central to all units, officers require assistance.
The massive movement in the earth has triggered a tsunami. A warning is posted to coastal areas from the Pacific Tsunami Warning Center. Within 30 minutes, the first series of tsunami waves reaches the shores. The earthquake and tsunami scenario described will affect all British Columbians. How quickly life finds its new normal after this disaster is up to you, your family, your neighbors. Over the next half hour, you'll hear from earthquake survivors telling their stories on what they did to stay alive.
We're all huddled under this tiny table, our heads huddled under the table.
Seismologists will speak to the science of earthquakes and tsunamis to help explain the risks.
We also know that some of the world's largest earthquakes have occurred just off the coast of British Columbia.
Leaders in personal and business preparedness will demonstrate the best practices for earthquake survival.
When we feel an earthquake, we want to drop, cover, and hold on.
And we'll show you how to follow simple steps in being prepared.
After a significant quake, there's a very good chance we're going to be without electrical, water, gas, and telephone services. You're going to need an emergency kit to support you and your family for a minimum of 3 days without help.
An earthquake is the sudden release of energy. It's when rocks along a fault zone suddenly slip. The surface of the earth is like a giant jigsaw puzzle made up of a number of tectonic plates. And those plates are moving. They move at about the same speed that your fingernails grow. The movement of those plates is what causes earthquakes. Well, here in British Columbia, earthquakes are occurring every single day. We record more than 2,000 earthquakes across British Columbia each year. And we also know that some of the world's largest earthquakes have occurred just off the coast of British Columbia.
People often view major events, maybe major catastrophes, as things that happen to other people. It's a sort of a natural calming mechanism. So a lot of people simply don't want to accept the fact that there will be a major earthquake in this region. There will be, definitely, but they don't want to accept that fact because it's a very scary prospect, and understandably so.
Unfortunately, we cannot predict earthquakes. Earthquakes strike without warning, and that's one of the really terrifying aspects of this, is that there is no warning.
It's incredibly important for people to be aware of the risks and know what to do in an earthquake, because it does make them safer. When a large earthquake occurs, your first indicator might be a rumbling sound.
You might hear things rattling around in your house because that's the waves hitting and shaking items.
You're underneath that table or chair or whatever, that you're counting. It's a calming mechanism. It's not one of the first things we learned is to count. So by counting, it actually helps you stay calm and think clearly.
The damage would be greatest to the older buildings.
People can be in a state of shock in the wake of an earthquake. They may have survived the main event, the major earthquake, but there are aftershocks. People sort of find that a little bit unnerving.
The tsunami is it's a series of waves that will come in, generally generated by an earthquake. The tsunami travels across the ocean at about the speed of a jetliner, like dropping a rock or pebble into the water, and you can see the waves going out. So as you are farther away, those wave amplitudes are decreasing.
With a normal wave, like the storm waves or tidal waves, these are just happening on the surface of the ocean. With a tsunami, it's a much greater volume. They're far, far more dangerous. If you get hit even by a small tsunami wave, even one that's, say, half a meter tall, it will knock you off your feet. It's got so much power behind it, and it's moving very quickly. Well, a lot of people assume that tsunami is going to be like the old Japanese paintings, where there's this huge curved wave that's going to come in. But generally speaking, it's not like that. It's like a flood. It slowly creeps in, and it can look quite innocuous at first. There are several videos from Japan where a small wave starts to trickle into a bay or a river area, and it doesn't look like much. And so people are standing around watching it because it just looks intriguing. All that time that people are watching, they really should be evacuating because that wave's moving faster than they can run.
The tsunami hazard in British Columbia is highest along the west coast of Vancouver Island and parts of Haida Gwaii. So it's the west coast where the waves are coming in directly in from the ocean, and the inlets. So Port Alberni inlets, Port Alice, any of the inlets coming in from the west coast are at the greatest hazard.
The more people we can educate and convince to come to grips with the fact that there is this great threat and that they do need to be prepared, they need to have their kit, their plan, that sort of thing, the more lives that will be saved in a major event when it happens. If you're prepared for that worst case scenario, then you really are prepared for anything.
It's important that we pass on our knowledge to the next generation, who in turn passes it on to the next generation. The story of the tsunami in 1700 has been passed down through the generations. One of those stories is about the flood, the tsunami that hit Anakla, Pachina Beach, and completely wiped out that tribe. And this was the flood in the 1700s. After the tsunami happened, then all of the tribes, they checked on each other to see what kind of damage the tsunami had done. And when they got out to Anakla, they realized that there were no survivors.
Nothing left.
Nothing left. The big houses were gone. All of the people were gone. There were probably 10 longhouses that had 50 people in each longhouse. And so it was this tribe that was wiped out by the tsunami in the 1700s. Our village is right on the beach, so it is at zero altitude. So we are very concerned about the big one that people continue to talk about. And so we are taking measures to help make sure that our people will not be wiped out again by a big tsunami or earthquake. We are in the process under our new treaty and being a self-governing First Nation to build a subdivision up the hill from the beach, and over time we will be trying to move our people up into a safer area. I think that in order to be fully prepared, you need to have your emergency preparedness plan in place. You also need to make sure that you have a source of water so that if anything happens that you're able to self-contain for a week or so. And also just to be on alert for any signs that show that a disaster is coming.
Coming up after the break, we'll hear a first-hand account of earthquake survival.
Everything just sort of starts vibrating and shaking.
Then, we'll find out what you can use from home to create your own earthquake kit.
It's always difficult to talk about the earthquake. As time passes, it becomes easier, but I still don't enjoy revisiting that day.
That's for our starter. Okay, there are lines down there, so maybe I think we should go this way.
I was finished my Bachelor's of Music from the University of Victoria, and I just wanted to travel. And my uncle is from New Zealand originally, so my whole life I'd heard about what a wonderful country it was. So the morning of February 22nd, I went to the Christchurch airport to pick up my parents who had just flown in from Vancouver. So I decided to take my parents down the street to an Indian restaurant that I knew was quite good because I'd always seen it packed full of people. And we were just tucking into our appetizers, and all of a sudden I heard this low rumble. Everything just sort of starts vibrating and shaking like this. And then I looked out the window and I watched the wall, a brick wall of a building across the street, sort of ripple and fall. Then the awnings on the sidewalk around us collapsed inward and we were in darkness. We could no longer see outside. And I was thrown out of my chair. And I remember looking down at the table. I must have been in midair. And the next thing I remember is being on the ground in the restaurant. I had been taught so many times through earthquake preparedness drills here in British Columbia that you get under the table and you just start counting. So we were all huddled under this tiny table, our heads huddled under the table. And by the time we got to 12 1000, the shaking had stopped. We sort of found our way to the front of the restaurant where we could see light because the wall had fallen away. And we were able to crawl out the window. All of the facades came off the fronts of the building, so all the bricks and mortar were lying in the streets. The decorative moldings and things off of buildings, again, all come crashing down. And you're looking inside buildings. It's almost like the back of a dollhouse, as if the walls come off and you can just see into all the rooms. There was no running water. There was a lot of dazed expressions and people just in the street sort of looking around at the damage. One of the videos that I shot using my camera shows us walking up the street and you just hear a cacophony of sounds. You can hear a hissing sound, which is actually a leaking natural gas main.
Oh my God, look at that.
I still don't enjoy revisiting that day. However, I do so in the hopes that my story helps others to understand what it's like to be in an earthquake and to better prepare themselves should they ever experience one.
I think part of the difficulty when it comes to a large-scale earthquake for most people, for everyone who's never been through an event like that, is it's too big. None of us really have a context to really compare it to. When you look at the Southern Alberta flooding from 2013, that was about $6 billion in damages. We're talking about an earthquake that would cost about $75 billion in damage. With $75 billion of total economic losses and only $20 billion of that covered by insurance, $55 billion needs to come from somewhere. We know that governments aren't sitting on a stack of loonies. Our polling indicates that people think it's going to take place in 50 or 100 years from now, so they don't need to deal with it now. But the reality is it could happen tomorrow morning, and we're not prepared. Fortunately, we haven't seen one in Canada in 400 plus years, but it's a 1 in 500 year event. When you interrupt the flow of goods and services in and out of the ports and the airports on the west coast of Canada, you are not just affecting BC businesses, you're affecting businesses right across this country. We can certainly make contingency plans that make sure that we're as best prepared as we can be to respond to some of the things that we know are likely to take place.
Coming up after the break, we'll learn exactly what to do if you find yourself experiencing an earthquake.
Grab on with one arm, cover the back of your neck with one hand, and stay nice and low.
My name is Jennifer McClarty and I'm with Emergency Management BC's social media unit. One of the first questions I typically get asked is, why should I bother preparing for an earthquake? It's never going to happen in my lifetime. Well, I'd like to suggest the odds say otherwise. So for me, it's not worth the risk not to get prepared, especially when it doesn't take a lot of time and it doesn't have to take a lot of money to get the basics in place. In fact, you may already have a lot of the items in your home. We need to get prepared because after a significant quake, there's a very good chance we're going to be without electrical, water, gas, and telephone services. Stores will likely be closed and ATMs will likely be down. It's not going to be a case of running out to the store for those last-minute items. You're going to need an emergency kit with enough basic supplies to support you and your family for a minimum of 3 days without help. In your kit, you'll need water. The general rule of thumb is 4 liters of water per person per day. You're also going to have to feed your family over a minimum of 72 hours. Really good things to have in your kit are canned goods. Hearty soups, chili, and tuna are good choices. Other great items to have in there are peanut butter, granola bars, fruit bars, and crackers. If you can, consider buying dehydrated meals. They're lightweight, they're easy to pack, and they have extremely long shelf lives. In terms of basic supplies, if the power goes out, you're going to need to be able to see in the dark. So make sure you have flashlights or battery-operated lanterns on hand. You're also going to want to stay informed with what's going on, so it's important to have a battery-operated radio so you can follow instructions from local officials. To ensure everything is going to run during a disaster, have batteries, and not just one set of batteries, a full replacement set. Earthquakes kick up a lot of dust, so a really good thing to include in your kit are dust masks, one for each member of the family. Small bills, another really good addition. If vendors do open following an earthquake, they likely won't be taking debit or credit cards. Other good things is you're going to have hygiene products for every member of the family over that 3 days. Things like toilet paper, toothbrushes, toothpaste, bar soap, hand sanitizer, baby wipes, and diapers if you need them. So once you've collected everything and put it into your kit, where do you keep it? The key thing to remember here is accessibility. You want it in a place where it can be gotten to easily. A good place is your front hall closet. Another good place is the front of your garage, maybe with your camping equipment like a Coleman stove. For more tips about emergency preparedness, visit www.emergencyinfobc.gov.bc.ca.
I'm Captain Brock Henson, Emergency Program Officer for the District of Saanich. Let's talk about what we should do during an earthquake, what we don't want to do during an earthquake, and what we should do if we were by our coast and felt an earthquake. I'm going to get some help from one of our firefighters to show us how to drop, cover, and hold on properly. Let's go. When we feel an earthquake, we want to drop cover and hold on. Drop cover and hold on is the recommended protective action to take during an earthquake by rescue workers and first responders all across North America. So when we feel an earthquake, drop to the ground. If a table or a desk is close by, get underneath that table or underneath that desk, grab on with one arm, cover the back of your neck with one hand, and stay nice and low. You want to keep that position till the shaking stops and count to 60 after the shaking stops. Now, if we're near some glass or near some windows, when we drop, cover, and hold on, it's a good idea to point our backside towards that window. If we don't have a desk or a table nearby, what I want you to do is drop, cover, and hold on next to a piece of furniture. If there's no furniture, I want you to drop, cover, and hold on near an interior wall. Now, what I don't want you to do during an earthquake is to run to a doorway. Doorways in modern construction are not necessarily stronger than the rest of the building. I also don't want you to run outside. Running outside can be one of the most dangerous things you could do during an earthquake. If you're by our coast and you feel an earthquake, I want you to get to high ground, and to get to high ground as soon as possible. Now, high ground depends where you are on our coast, so where you live, where you play, where you visit. You want to make sure you know how high you need to get if you feel an earthquake, and there could be a tsunami generated by that earthquake.